Hey everybody, Pastor Eric here with Pastor Steve again from his house in Portage. I'm here at my house in Beaver Dam. This is what, our fifth video, Steve? I think. I don't know.
And I'm not good at math.
Yeah,
We'll say yes.
the maths is not your strength.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we're just excited to be able to come and hang out again and talk and share more of studying the Bible. That's really kind of what we want to get to is we don't have an agenda one way or the other, but studying the Bible together as friends. And hopefully you've been able to study the Bible and kind of read the texts and go along with what we've been doing. We are still learning and we're trying to work through some different things together, but we're just glad to be able to come and hang out. So we're going to be talking today about the book of Ecclesiastes. Last week we were New Testament. This week, well, the other video, we were New Testament. This time we're going to be in Old Testament. Kind of like to go back and forth and kind of get a little bit of a different view of each one. Last week we talked about Paul writing to the Romans and encouraging them. And this time, Solomon in his great wisdom is talking to us, his friends, people that he can reach out to. So Pastor Steve, if you want to go ahead and read that, we'll be in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 through 12.
Yeah. And I'm reading out of the ESV, the English Standard Version. But it starts like this. It says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken.
I thought this was a good verse or a good passage, especially talking about like now, like what we're going through. I know you and I, even though we don't live that far from each other, and I think I've seen you more now via video than I am living so close to each other.
Yeah, I think so.
And it seems like now friendships are taking a little bit of a different definition, being that we have to connect via virtual connection like this. Yeah. So I guess the first question, like, where is Jesus? Where do we see Jesus in this?
So that, as I've been looking at this, has been interesting, because I feel like in a lot of the other passages, if not all of them that we've looked at, it sort of leaps out at you right at the start, right? I mean, even the most recent one that we looked, it's just front and center in every way, shape, and form. This one, it doesn't just jump right out at me, but as I'm looking at it, I'm feeling like it's definitely there, right? Because it's talking about togetherness, it's talking about companionship, it's talking about the fact that we're not alone. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the first thing that I think of when I think about my relationship with Jesus, is the fact that I am not alone in this. Mm-hmm. Right? That every step of my journey is one taken with Christ right there with me every step of the way. Like he's not just leaving me to my own devices and only popping in when it's convenient for him or when it's too overwhelming. Like he's there for all of it. And so I see him in this passage in the fact that he's right here with me on my journey, and I really enjoy that. I don't know, what do you think?
I was kind of gonna say kind of the same, in the sense that he is right there, but you think about friendship. What is friendship? Mm-hmm. It's a relationship, and what are relationships built on? Typically love to some degree or another, not always like the swooning, looking in your eyes love, but like the, hey, I care about you love. And, I don't know all the definitions of love. You got your agape and all these other different ones. But so I guess I see it through that. Like we read all about Jesus being love, and like Jesus saying, whoever has been forgiven little loves little, but he has been forgiven much loves much. And like, you just hear all these different texts about Jesus talking about love. And I guess I see Jesus in this through that, like friendships. Because I know that, you and I have been through different times, and we've had different conversations that, like, that's all we had was just the friendship, man, and just being able to communicate, connect. I know, I've gone through tough times, and I've told you about them. You've gone through tough times and told me about them. And so where do you see Jesus? You see it through the love of the friendship, man. Like,
Mhm.
even some of our other friends that we've connected with, and um, that's kind of where I see it. That's where I see Jesus, is that he gives us people to connect with.
And I think
And
that's an important distinction too, right? Because it's like that shapes the idea of what God's love looks like.
mhm,
And I think I've told many people, when they ask me, like, what does Jesus look like to you? What does your idea of him look like?
mhm,
It's run through that filter of what my friends have done when they've been there for me. How they, like you said, when we've been through difficult times, my ability to be able to go to you and say, oh, this is what I'm dealing with. And even if it's not, you know, for a solution, just to have somebody to listen is huge. You know what I
mhm.
mean? And for somebody to say, yes, I'm willing to be there with you in this and go through good times, bad times, whatever it is, you know,
Yeah.
um, because my brain is like addled with pop cultural references. It made me think of as we're reading this, the Michael Jackson song, You Are Not Alone.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I love that, because that opening refrain, right? You are not alone. I am here with you in that chord. It's like that's kind of how I picture my relationship with Jesus. That's
Mhm.
what my friendships remind me of too, right? Is the fact that, yeah, like I have people that I can count on,
Yeah.
and it's huge to be able to say that. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because I think that our current situation is showing us it's not something to be taken for granted.
Yeah.
And I think that's what God's love does. Like you said, it brings people together like that.
Mhm.
And like when people connect with Jesus, when they've experienced him, they want to connect others to it too.
Mhm.
That's what God's love does. It breeds connection.
Well, and you talk about connection too. Like, verse 10 here says, "If they fall, one will lift up his companion." Like, I guess I see Jesus in that, in the sense that, like, I can only picture. Okay, so for instance, we went to Israel,
Mhm.
and we went to Magdala, where Mary Magdalene was from,
Yeah.
and on one of the walls they had this big, huge mural, man, and it brought me to tears. All it is like a bunch of feet,
Mhm.
and then a hand coming through the feet and touching the hem of Jesus'
Mhm.
robe. And, like, I can only imagine, like, reading this, "For if they fall, one will lift up his companion." Like, that moment where Jesus was like, he stopped and said, "Somebody touched me." And then seeing him, like, reach down and lift up that person. I can imagine him going to the woman caught in adultery, and,
Mhm.
like, grabbing her hand and lifting her up and saying, "Don't do this anymore. Go ahead. Like, nobody's here judging you." So, like, for if they fall, one will lift up his companion. Like, I totally see Jesus in that, in all the references that I know through scripture.
Mhm.
Um,
And real life too, because like just hearing you say that, it makes me think of when I played sports, right? Basketball, football, whatever it was, you eat it, you take a tumble, you get wiped out, you get depleted. Your teammates, if there's a strong bond there, they're right there to pick you up, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and because they're in it with you, they're invested. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I see a lot of what you're saying is connecting me to that idea, right?
Hmm.
You're invested. There's a togetherness. When you're loved by God, he's invested in you, and you in turn, when you build those connections with other people, and even with your relationship with God, you invest back because it matters, right? It means something to you.
Well, as he continues, it says, "Woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up." Like, man, I remember last summer. This is super embarrassing, but I'll share. Um, Last summer, I was at the camp. I think it was during work, but I don't remember. But I was blowing off all the pine needles that fall on the roofs of the cabins,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and I was just going from cabin to cabin, blowing them off with the leaf blower. And I got up on one cabin. It was super steep, and as I was blowing off the needles, like, it was wet underneath them. And so I started to slide down one of the roofs, and you're talking 12, 13 feet up in the air. And I caught myself on the edge, and I was okay, like wasn't too terrified, but I just thought to myself, man, I can't get down. And I
Mm.
looked all around, dude, there's nobody around.
Mm.
And I'm like, dang, what am I gonna do? And so sure enough, I had to call one of my staff who happened to be there working with us. And I said, hey, I need to come and hold the ladder in case I slide down this and have to like grab the ladder when I fall. And, they came, but it was exactly that. Like I had no one to help me.
Yeah.
And when you talk about seeing Jesus and you talk about you- being there and your friends, like it is true. Like in those moments where we're alone, we do need somebody there to help us through to make good decisions. And you and I have talked about this. Like it's like, dude, I if I need Shanna around because I make poor decisions when she's not. I will eat cereal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That was my reality yesterday, dog. I had Honey Nut Cheerios for breakfast. I had hot dogs for lunch, and I made peanut butter and jelly. It was like I was 9 again.
Oh no.
It was great. It was absolutely great. Probably not the best for my blood sugar, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it's true. Like the people that matter the most are going to have the biggest impact on your life, right?
Mhm.
And as such, like it's going to lead into all these other things, like you talked about, like verse 11 when it says, if two lie together they keep warm, but if how can one keep warm alone? I was thinking about that because that's the one example in this whole thing that I think is the least modern. And so you kind of wonder, it's like, well, what does that have to do with, like, with anything? You think about, like, when they were talking about this kind of stuff, people didn't have a whole lot, you know, especially if you weren't a person of means. You essentially had the clothes on your back, and that was about it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you've ever gone camping. Like I love Pathfinders. I love going camping. Um, you ever gone camping and you've forgotten like a core essential piece of anything? Man, you notice it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you could be sitting there and in a great tent and then all this stuff and da 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 da. But if you don't have a good sleeping bag, good protection around you, man, you're miserable. I remember a couple years ago, I was up at the Grand Canyon and we were camping out. And, you think Arizona, you think the desert. It was pretty warm during the day and everything like that. But at night, it gets a little bit chilly. And I hadn't packed accordingly. So all I had was like a simple little like blanket. I didn't have like a good sleeping bag and stuff like that. I got like nine minutes of sleep maybe the whole night because I was just freezing. I was absolutely freezing. And it's one of those things where it's like it's noticeable, right? If you're having to face all this stuff alone. If you had somebody there with you, like what Solomon's talking about here, body heat, right? You have somebody with you, it's like, yeah, you might be cold, but you can get by if you have somebody giving you what they have, giving of themselves,
Mhm.
and to help sustain you and move you on. And that kind of thing matters. Like you put that into a real world application, right? And I can see myself in that situation. I've been camping where it's been raining and there's holes in the tent and you're freezing and you're like huddled back to back in your sleeping bag just to even try to like maintain. Like it still doesn't make things easy,
Mhm.
but it matters in a way that's important. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think that's indicative of the fact that God doesn't want us to face anything alone. He doesn't want us to experience good things alone. He doesn't want us to experience bad things alone.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things, like in our current situation, I think it's making things so, I guess, like noticeable as we have to tackle things in a way that we're like, oh man, we might have taken things for granted before. You know what I mean? But the flip side of that is it does let you know too who you have that you can count on. And I think God is first and foremost at the front of that line.
Yeah.
In my experience as I look at these things, so it's like kind of moving on to that question of like, where are you in that passage? I see myself and it's like, I'm in need of connection,
Mhm.
both my friends and my God. Like I know that I cannot face what life has to throw at me by myself. You know what I mean? And it's so encouraging to know that like I have a God that I can count on that'll be there for me. And it it matters having a God who loves me like that to
Yeah.
be there.
Can you imagine having to go through this like back in the 1900s? Like it had to be tough, man. Like not having that real connection, like we do. Like we got this, man. We're so fortunate. But can you imagine going through like the Spanish flu and they quarantined everybody? Like you talk about complete disconnect from the world. And we're lucky we have websites and we got all sorts of news updates. But I mean, they didn't have as quick access to info as we do.
Hmm.
So you can definitely see like having a friend and having people around is it's important, man. Like even from like early days in history, the wisest man on earth is saying like friendship's important and connection is important. And you see Jesus through it. You see, man, we've had people come over and they've just brought things out of the blue and you're just like, whoa, like I needed that. And you see Jesus in it because they had no way of knowing these things. And just I don't know, man. It's cool to see how clear it is to see Jesus in this.
So it makes me think then, if people are facing isolation, right? If you're saying, well, that's great, but I don't have somebody I can count on. Maybe my family life wasn't the best. Maybe I've had toxic people that I've needed to get away from. Maybe relationships that haven't worked out or whatever, and you're feeling kind of isolated and alone. Then what do you think this passage is saying to them, for them, right? Because that's what I think of when I think of like, where are you in this?
Mm,
You know what I mean? Because I do think it's important, and I don't want people that might be in a season where they feel alone or they're having to deal with isolation to feel like God has given up on them, or he if you don't have that right now in this moment in the way that you would like, that means that this is not applicable to you, because I think it is too, right?
mhm.
Um, but yeah, what would you say to somebody facing that kind of situation where they might feel like isolated and alone as we look at this?
Man, that's an interesting flip side that you bring to it. That you could, and just yesterday I was hearing a thing in what was it, North Carolina.
Mm.
Domestic abuse is up right now because people are in situations with people that aren't their friends,
Mhm.
and is toxic. I don't know, man. Like that's tough. I'm no expert, but I would say that you got to find that one friend that you can hold on to and connect with, and that understands and that hears you. Um, it is hard though because sometimes you do feel alone, no matter what, no matter how many people are around you. I know I've been in crowds and
Mhm.
events that we've done and been at, and like I just feel alone, man. Like
Mhm.
everybody else is here with somebody, but I'm not here with anybody. Um, you got me, dude. You got me.
You know what it made me think of?
Mm.
It actually kind of took me back to that first question we asked too, like, where is Jesus in this passage? Like, I wasn't thinking about it at the start, but it made me think of Christ on the cross.
Mm.
Like, you want to talk about somebody who was isolated and alone? Like, he couldn't even feel his Father's presence,
Oh, yeah.
right? And that separation, feeling the weight of sin, and that separation that comes with sin, it literally was heartbreaking,
Powerful, dude. Yeah.
right? And so I just want to encourage anybody who might be watching this who might feel like I'm in this alone. Like, A, you have a God who understands. Like, Jesus has been there. He has done that. He has felt it and experienced it on a level and an intensity that goes beyond our understanding. And he understands. And I want to encourage you that he's not going to just leave you to face this by yourself. Right. I'm a firm believer that when we cry out to our God, that he responds, and not just in theoretical ways, right? That he's a God of very real responses. So I want to encourage anybody that, A, if you're feeling this way, or if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like isolated or alone, call out to God.
Mhm.
Ask him to be there with you in that moment, for him to give you his presence, for him to give you his peace and assurance. Like, he gives us promises that we can claim. And I think that this is one of those, even though it's not like explicitly spelled out, he's promising that you're not going to be alone, that he will be there with you.
Yeah.
Um, and the second is like, I mean, if you come across this and you're watching this, even though you might know us, you might not in real life. Like, you're not alone. Like, we're here.
Mhm.
There are people here. There are resources here for you. And even if it's just to reach out, leaving a comment in the comment section below, whatever it is, like, if you're feeling isolated or alone, like, we're here for you. And
Mhm.
we're willing to connect with you and maybe help you connect to other things too, so that that you don't have to face whatever you're going through on your lonesome. Like, we're in it together, and I think that's what the church is there for. I think that's one of the reasons that God gave us this institution, right? Because it's not a building; it's a collection of broken people in need of a savior. And when they come together, having experienced God's love, and they realize the beauty of what it means to be a part of something, then it adds strength, right? Like they say here, if a man is lifted up, I think that's what the church is designed to do. I think when it's doing things right, that's what it does, right? We're here to give whatever help or support that we can. And so I just want to encourage people, if they are feeling that way, to just recognize that you're not alone. We are here for you. The church is here for you. Most importantly, though, that Jesus is here for you, because he's been through all of this. He understands, and I think that there's a special place in his heart for people who are in those positions, because he knows exactly the power of connection and community, which is why he's given it to us.
Mhm. Dude, I think you just hit the nail on the head with, like, what's the point? You know, the point is that we do have not this building or even institution, but we have this family.
Mhm.
And that's the point, that, like verse 12, the one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him. Threefold cord is not quickly broken. So, like, that's the point, that alone, yeah, it's tough, but we're not alone. We do have someone next to us, or someone that is willing to be next to us and go every step of the way with us. And if that person's not there, we do have a God that's already said, like, hey, I will be there. I am there. I'm not leaving you.
Mhm.
Because it is true, like, you can be in a crowd and be alone. The presence of people doesn't mean
Yeah.
you're not alone. Like, I know, like I said, there's been moments where I've felt very alone and I've been around people.
Mhm.
Then there's been moments where I've felt all alone and I'm literally all alone, but I know I have people, like,
Mhm.
I've been on both sides, and definitely. And then, just like you said too, like, with the flip side of being in toxic relationships and having toxic friendships, been there too. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's tough, but I think that's the whole point, is that we are among this family of believers that are there no matter what. There shouldn't be judging each other. That should be there to say, hey, I'm just as messed up. I'm just as broken as you feel, like, nobody's perfect. You're no more broken than I am. You're no more messed up than I am. I'm no more messed up than you. Like, we're all on the same page. Like, we're all at that same level of trying to get through this day by day, not having a clue what we're doing, like,
Right.
I remember when I was a kid, man, I was always like, oh, when I'm an adult, I got it. I have it figured out. I'm in my 30s and now I'm still like, what am I doing? Like, you know?
But see, and I think that's the beauty of what God's love does, right? Is that, like, it it shepherds us through,
Yep.
because when we don't know what we're doing, we run to him and we're like, Lord, I don't understand. And he's like, no, I do though.
Hmm.
I know what I'm doing. I know what you're doing. And he offers guidance. When we feel isolated, he offers companionship. When we feel broken, he offers healing. When we feel like we've done too much and that we're, like, excluded, he offers reconciliation and redemption. Right.
Yep.
And what the love of Jesus does is it brings us back into community and communion, not just with each other, but with the God of the universe, the God that created us.
Mm.
Right. It restores, it lifts up, and that's a beautiful thing, you know to know that we have a place, we have a home,
Mhm.
right, in the family of God, that whatever circumstances or situations we might be facing, we're a part of something. We matter. We mattered so much to Jesus that he says, I'm not going to leave you to face this stuff alone. I'm not going to leave you out there alone, stuck in the conditions of your life. I'm going to die so that you can be reunited, and you matter so much to me that it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You're worth it, that I'm willing to give my life to give you that chance. And so, like, knowing you're loved like that, yeah, I do think that's the point, you know?
Yeah. Powerful. Well, I think we've exhausted our time, man. I always appreciate this time. It's always been a blessing to me. And, the viewers out there, we hope that something that we said of the nonsense that comes from our mouth is a blessing, and that you see the Lord in it. And, it just reminds you that you've got a God who loves you. You've got a God who cares, who never gives up, who never runs away. And no matter how alone you are, like, we're told by the wisest person in Scripture that friendship is a good thing. And hopefully you can look back at texts about Jesus and other individuals that went through tough times, that had their friends around, that you see that, God gives us people in our lives to help us through those moments. So thanks so much, guys. Pastor Steve, you got anything else to finish up with?
Like I say, man, I just want to encourage people, if you are feeling that way, go ahead and reach out in the comment section below. We want to do everything we can to connect with people. I do pray that this stuff is as beneficial to y'all as it is to us. I know I love it. I enjoy it. So yeah, if you want, give us a like, a subscribe, help us build our ability to connect with people. We appreciate it. But we just thank you for being here, because more than anything, we're just praying that Jesus is lifted up, and that's who you're connecting with first and foremost.
Yep.
Thank you guys for being here, man.
Awesome. Hey guys, we look forward to seeing you again on our next episode of 3 a.m. where we'll be studying the Bible, asking the 3 questions again. Where is Jesus? Where am I? And what's the point? So I hope you guys will join us on this journey as we learn too. We're not the experts. We're just 2 friends hanging out and talking about the Bible. So thanks so much. Hope you guys have a good weekend. See you guys soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.